Hello everyone, welcome to this video in which I share my vision about publishing culture in the BPN community. My name is Antonio Ruiz. I'm from the University of Sevilla. Well, first of all, I would like to thank Matthias and Ernest for this initiative, which I'm totally convinced it will be helpful and positive for our community. Of course, I'm also grateful to them for inviting me to this panel, since it has been a fantastic opportunity for me to reflect and to do my bit about a subject that many of us consider to be a matter about we should reflect. Well, let me start sharing two considerations to support my view. The first consideration is about the notion of publishing culture. I Googled for a while, but I didn't find any convincing definition. For this talk, I will consider that publishing culture refers to the behavior that a community has regarding how many publications, where, how, and when they should be published, either as a group or as an individual. The second consideration is about the research evaluation system, which I consider it is the most influential factor in this notion of publishing culture. Not in vain, today, whether we like it or not, it doesn't matter. This is mainly based on articles published in GCR journals. Thus, as a third consideration, although initially publishing culture and research evaluation may seem independent, my view is that they are really two sides of the same coin, and they are closely related. Well, before answering organizer question, I'd like to frame my view telling you what motivates me to reflect on this thing. Well, my first motivation is that I don't feel comfortable with the current model. Nowadays, culture is subordinated to evaluation. It is widely accepted that publishing culture has changed in recent years, and not exactly for the better. This view is aligned to many other voices more authoritative than mine. I'm referring, for example, to Informatics Europe. This is the organism that represents the academic and research community in informatics in Europe, which some months ago published a joint statement, very critical, by the way, on the current informatics research evaluation model. It's only a 3 pages long document, and it is worth to read it, believe me. Other motivation comes from my role as a member of the governing board of the Spanish Scientific Society of Informatics, where we have been recently working on these topics. In fact, next week will be held a roundtable where the current Spanish evaluation model will be discussed in the light of the joint statement of Informatics Europe. We are quite expecting because we have involved the authorities of the National Evaluation Agency, the National Funding Agency, and the promoters of the declaration. It will be virtual, and all of you are invited, of course. It will be in Spanish. Last but not least, motivation. As a head of a research group, a large one, by the way, it is important to know what policymakers are thinking today about research evaluation, because that is what they will use tomorrow to evaluate us. In this sense, what really worries me is that the time, the money, and the energy of many people are at play, and I have no control about it. That makes me a bit nervous. Well, let's go to the question that the organizer prepared for us. Well, I've organized them in 3 main blocks. Let's start with the publication venue. First question is about journal versus conferences. In my opinion, this first question is not difficult. The value of a publication is mainly in the contribution itself, not only in the venue it is published. In this regard, I totally agree with Informatics Europe principle that says that scientific conferences had to be regarded as being as important as journal. The second question is about workshops. I have to confess that in general, I'm not completely sure about its value, mainly because they are a kind of mini conference where most of the submission are papers previously rejected in the main conference. Ideally, a workshop would be a small group of researchers with different skills and specialties who meet to achieve one single goal, writing a manuscript for publication with a promising result. And if not, at least a paper with the most important findings. In the first workshop I participated, I remember, many years ago, we published a paper with the most important findings. I will always remember it as a very positive experience. I would like to repeat it, definitely. The last question of this block requires a long answer. Anyway, my short answer is that it's a decision of the community. At the end of the day, a conference exists because there is a community behind it doing research on a nuclear question, a number of nuclear questions of that community. If the community focus attracts just a few researchers and the community doesn't see any problem, nothing needs to be done. But if the community wanted to reach more people, for example, in order to have more impact, then the community focus should be revisited and probably expanded. In this sense, in order to maintain a minimum number, experience tells us that we must always try to attract more people, and that it is a work for the guardians of the community. In the case of VPN community, our steering committee has been doing this very well for a long time, from the very beginning, I would say. And I'm sure that we'll continue to do it as well, or even better. So in that sense, we are in other many senses, we are a lucky community. Well, let's go then to the second block of questions. First question of this second block is about if we can trust in journal or conference rankings to assess the quality of a publication. This is a quite controversial question. I would say yes, but only partially. Obviously, at least in my case, there is no doubt that the venue ranking is an indicator to be taken into account, of course. But in general, these rankings should be complemented with an indicator on the particular paper impact. Among other reasons, because we are giving it to a particular publication the value of a journal or a conference, which was something acceptable years ago when there were no indicators for single papers. But now we have this kind of indicator, and then we can do it in a different way. In fact, I'm going to present one of them in the following question, which is about how to assess the contribution of a single publication. For what I would use a hybrid approach. I will start following the Informatics Europe principles, in particular to evaluate qualitatively the paper. Basically, it consists in reading and assessing the paper. Of course, I will also consider the traditional impact factor for evaluating from the quantitative standpoint. But as a novelty, I will incorporate the so-called field-weighted citation impact of the paper. This is a normalized indicator that shows how the article citation compares to similar articles in the same field and time frame. I believe this way it's a bit more comprehensive and even fair than the previous one. Well, let's go to the last block of questions, that it's about interdependence between publishing culture and research evaluation. Well, this first question was partially answered at the beginning of my talk. For better or for worse, the way we evaluate people, of course, influence the way we work. I would say in a decisive way. Generally speaking, few people can work in a way not compliant with the mainstream culture, which in terms of organizers' words is papers, papers, and more papers. For example, to become a professor, it is necessary to publish 24 articles in journal. Most of the researchers will have 50. Really, that's happening in Spain. And unfortunately, the first ones to arrive are not the best researchers, but the best professional in writing articles, the most productive. I'm sure we all agree that quantity is fundamentally promoted because quality is difficult to measure. That's obvious. And it's very difficult to solve. But in the same way, we will agree that the final result will be that the researchers will prioritize quantity over quality. Of course, that you can produce a lot of high quality papers, but honestly, what percentage could do it in a given community? In our community, for example? Well, I leave this question open and move on to the last one, which is what's wrong with the current culture of publishing? Well, in my opinion, there is no doubt that researchers must be doing something wrong because there are many people, a lot of people and associations that are acting to change the model. I agree with Informatics Europe in the sense that the current culture promotes highly productive researchers, even when their quality is on average lower than the other less productive researchers. In this sense, like any other community, perhaps, only perhaps, we should assume that we are not free from danger. I mean, we risk becoming a community where productivity prevails over quality. And although we have many highly productive and high quality members, this is extremely difficult to maintain. In the long term, I would bet for a quality-based model rather than a quantity-based model, like the current one. And in any case, at this point, the question that comes to my mind is, which is the model that do we really want as a community? I know that there is no time to answer it, and the interesting thing is to answer this question together. Well, but we can think a bit about it until the next Tuesday. Well, it only remains me to conclude this video by saying that I'm very happy to belong to this community, the VPN community, because it's a place where we have many different role models, and that's good, definitely good, really good. And all these role models coexist in harmony. And where it is possible, at the same time, to reflect on our present and our future. This is a fantastic combination. Well, that's all. Thank you very much for taking some minutes today to listen to me. Hope you have found this video interesting. See you on Virtual Sevilla VPN 2020. Bye.